After spending the last year and a half working in a domestic violence shelter, today I want to talk about what people are actually paying for when they choose relationships with others and with themselves. I'm also going to tell you about a tool I created 20 years ago when I was 18 that saved my life. The most important step in preventing domestic violence is to get clear with yourself about what matters: your time, your money, your future, and your health. I want to talk about this here because by the time I have this conversation with people in the domestic violence shelter, they've usually already lost everything. This is a conversation about prevention. If not for yourself, maybe it's for someone you love. Hi, I'm Brandon Gallagher. I hold a Master's of Education in Organizational Leadership and Adult Learning, and for over 20 years, I've worked in social services, community education, and community organizing. I'm here to help you build real belonging in your corner of the world. But I Love Him was the name of a book I had read in the 7th grade while dating my first abusive boyfriend. I had tried to break up with him in October, but my mother told me not to have such high expectations and to give him another chance. Because I gave in to her advice and I tolerated his screaming at me for another 2 months, I was 12 when I took my first pregnancy test. We are not responsible for how our parents condition us to have relationships, but at a certain point, we have to become responsible for choosing whether we want to keep up those old patterns or change them. We become responsible for whether we pass them on to our children. We become responsible for the outcomes of our choices. When I was 18 years old, I moved across the state to be with my high school boyfriend while he attended college. I had every reason to know better. On prom night, he screamed at me so loud that his voice shook the walls of the house. There were new red flags every week. And still, I gave him another chance to do better, just like I had been doing with every boyfriend since the 7th grade. One day, before heading off to school, he threw a real tantrum. He told me I was stupid, and somehow on this particular day, it occurred to me to ask myself, when did I become stupid? I was in university at age 15. I was on honor roll. He and I had been in the same advanced classes, and I scored more points than him on Knowledge Bowl. What had turned me stupid in just 1 year since high school? So I got out a pen and paper, and I consulted with my 11-year-old self about what I wanted in a relationship before that first abusive boyfriend ever came along. I wrote it all down, and then I made copies, and I measured my current relationship against that standard. It only took a few weeks of using it to realize that I was in a very bad relationship. So I broke up with him. Then I went back to the same old patterns with the same old abusive, entitled men. And the only relationships that I've regretted ever since then have been the ones where I didn't use the relationship reality check. It was a written reality check that took me 15 minutes a week, and it clarified for me whether I was falling back into old patterns of, but I love him, or if I was really with someone who deserved my energy and attention. Fast forward almost 2 decades. Since then, I've worked in domestic violence and social services and community health education extensively. I've tailored this checklist with the help of many therapists over the years. And finally, about 5 years ago, I met my current partner. And the wildest, most beautiful thing in the world happened. He encouraged me to use the relationship reality check. In fact, once I told him about it, he was relieved to learn there is an actual written rubric clarifying my expectations of a relationship. You see, he had also come from a severely abusive relationship where everything was made to be his fault. So when he found out that I had written down what I expect from my partner, and he could look at it himself to see whether these were reasonable expectations that he was able and willing to consent to or not. That was actually a healing moment of relief for him. And that is what being in a healthy relationship looks like. He doesn't see it as a threat. He sees it as a collaboration. If he's not meeting my expectations, he wants to know which expectations he's falling short on so he can reevaluate his own role, how he shows up, and whether or not he wants to consent to meeting those expectations at that point. I've learned that when you're with a partner who genuinely wants to collaborate with you to create a life together, the relationship reality check is a blessing. And when you're with a partner who wants to extract from you everything they can get before disposing of you, the relationship reality check is a different kind of blessing because it helps you see what's going on long before the relationship costs you more than you can afford to lose. When our relationship was on the rocks or when I seemed unhappy, he would ask me if I had checked in with the relationship reality check recently. Usually I had not. He asked me to use it and let him know if he was falling short in some area, or if my expectations had changed, or if something else was going on. We broke up twice, not because we didn't love each other, but because we each needed space to get better at loving ourselves before attempting to move forward with any relationship. We took a few months apart, did our own personal respective growth work with our therapists, and then reassessed whether we wanted to be together or not. It was not a given that we would get back together. It was a reassessment. And each time, our getting back together depended entirely on whether we were showing up for one another in the ways we each needed and deserved. I encouraged him to use the relationship reality check as well, and I used it to become more mindful of what I was bringing to the relationship. Was I bringing a healthy, self-aware energy and contributing my fair share of the household work? Was I paying my half of the bills? Was I speaking to him kindly? I can't expect something from a partner I'm not giving them in equal measure. So when you use the relationship reality check, the first thing you're getting from it is a clear sense of how much you're paying to be in the relationship compared to how much the relationship is paying you back. And this isn't measured in money, it's measured in energy. Money is just one form of energy, but if you're giving hugs and kisses to someone who is paying you back in screams and slaps, the energy is mismatched. If you don't want to end up paying for an entire house that your abusive soon-to-be ex will take half of in the divorce, you can pay $12.99 for a reusable tool for any relationship that helps you stop the relationship before it ever gets that far into the muck. It broke my heart every time someone would come into the shelter having given 10 or 20 or 40 years to a partner who didn't meet even the basic minimum standards of a friendship outlined in the relationship reality check. Many lost their whole 401k and would never be able to retire because they had stayed so long with someone who never truly was a partner in their lives. 2 or more decades. Many of them knew something wasn't right, but they didn't know what right looks like. So they didn't have a way to measure how wrong things were. And now they do. The longest of my bad relationships cost me upwards of $300,000. It resulted in my being homeless multiple years. If I had used the relationship reality check from the start of that relationship, it never would have escalated to the point where he was convincing me to sell my house and pay off his student loans and move across the country where he could isolate me from my family and my support network just before informing me we were getting divorced. That kind of devastation is completely preventable when you use the right measuring tool to check reality for yourself. The second thing you get out of the relationship reality check is real experience-based knowledge. I've been a 911 dispatcher, a shelter worker, a public health advocate, and have personally picked people up from abusive situations and gotten them out safely more times than my fingers can count. I have coached dozens, maybe hundreds of people through relationship-related decision-making in my career. I'm not a therapist and I don't provide therapy, but I do provide tools that I have seen help people make clearer decisions for themselves. And multiple therapists have told me their jobs got easier when clients brought them data from the relationship reality check, because it turns 6 weeks of piecing together patterns into one focused conversation. Safety and security are priceless. For people who survived childhood abuse, you might be in a completely healthy relationship, but still second guessing whether it's really healthy or you're just fooling yourself. And that is one of the hardest mind benders to move past for people who grew up always questioning your own reality as a child. The relationship reality check helps you check your perception against the evidence. So if everything is good, the data will tell you so. You can verify that this relationship is healthy, it's what you think it is, and then move on with your day. When you have clarity, anxiety goes down. And probably the most unexpected benefit has been success in the rest of my life, because people who work on themselves become the ones others trust with their careers and their families and their futures. Not because we're perfect, but because we're prepared. We've learned to face unpleasant facts and be real about it. When we practice that skill in our personal relationships, we reap the benefits of having that skill in every aspect of our lives. That can pay off in higher salaries, promotions, all kinds of opportunities. And probably the final, most invaluable gift using the relationship reality check has given me is real emotional connection. Real belonging starts with honest assessment. You can't have intimacy with a mask on. This works for friendships, casual dating, serious dating, engagement, marriage. I've also seen parents use it with teenagers to help them practice assessing relationships early on, based on how people are really treating them, not just based on feelings. Respecting yourself is an essential, important life skill. And it's easier to learn young, but it's never impossible to learn. I wish I had learned to trust my gut by the 7th grade instead of being taught to give him another chance when my gut was already telling me no. Once you have clear-eyed understanding to work with, you can make a decision that's right for you based on reality. You can talk about your observations with your therapist or a trusted mentor or friend. You can see the patterns plainly. You can decide whether the person showing up in the way that you document every week is the kind of person you want helping you raise your children. And if you want to be a real relationship superstar, use the relationship reality check on yourself to see if you're treating your friends and your loved ones the way you believe they deserve to be treated. A couple of years of consistently using it to evaluate how you show up will turn your unhealthy or unsatisfying relationships around completely. It does not guarantee perfect relationships, but it does make you aware of the reality of the relationship you're in. And once you have that awareness, you can make choices based on truth rather than wishful thinking. The relationship reality check is $12.99 for individual personal use. Every sale funds direct mutual aid and community care work. If you're a therapist or run a domestic violence shelter, you can find licensing and bulk pricing in the video description below. And if this resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. What's one pattern you wish you had recognized earlier in your relationships? What would it have saved you? This channel is about equipping people to live your best lives and cultivate real belonging for yourself and the people around you. I'm here to provide more than just talk and ideas. I'm here to share the tools I've gained in my lifetime so you can thrive and enjoy your life now like I wish I could have learned to do sooner. Subscribe if you want to learn and grow along with me. And if you know someone who might benefit from a relationship reality check, please hit that share button to see that they get the invitation. You deserve genuine inclusion and care, and you have the capacity to create that for yourself and the people around you. Thanks for spending this time with me today.